Welcome to Living the Green, where cannabis science meets real talk, real stories, and let's be honest, some pretty high vibes. Meet your hosts, Abir, a nurse practitioner and cannabis expert blending science with soul, and Michal, a psychotherapist, truth teller, and mental health maverick. Together, they break it down, challenge what you think you know while keeping it real. So grab your joint, your curiosity, or just an open mind, and let's get elevated. Aloha, welcome to another episode of Living the Green, where we talk about cannabis, health, and everything in between. And today's everything in between is about methods of consumption. We all hear people who use cannabis, or and there's a lot of variety of how people use it. So we're gonna talk about today what are the different methods how you can use cannabis. What's the difference between using them? What's considered can be possibly good? What's not possibly good? So we're going to address all of those. And so tune in. And I'd like to welcome my co-host, Michal, who's going to be joining and shooting all her questions at me. And let's get ready to start this.
Yeah, I'm so excited to be here with you, Abby, and I love this topic because, just what we want to, there's so many questions that I would love to ask a medical provider about how different methods of consumption affect different parts of the body and things, so I'm really excited to ask you some questions and to learn from you.
Yes, I love honestly talking about cannabis, and this is like I used to before, like when I first got into cannabis certifications and stuff, I started reading. There wasn't anything formal education that you can read about. I started just reading what's available research out there about cannabis and how it affects the body, and then there was like some certifications and I got certified. And so I just love to talk about weed and how to use it and like the science behind it, the actual science behind it, not just, oh, I used it and it affected me that way. But what you could see now, what's available or what you've heard people is like in general talk about cannabis is available not just in smoking or inhaled methods. There's edibles, there's topicals. There's intranasal, also like cannabis, like medications actually in Europe. I've seen some intravenous, but also all in like preliminary research, but not really anything out there. But what's available most commonly is inhaled methods, stuff you can smoke. And as you can see, we have different methods you can smoke. We're going to go a little bit more detail about different methods. And or ingestibles, meaning anything you eat, or edibles. And the other thing is topicals, meaning anything you apply topically on your skin and on your body. And the difference is how things work is how long they start, like how fast they work and how long they last. So have you, like experienced like between like edibles and smoking?
Guilty.
Yes. Or tell me, have you, how was your first edible experience? Do you remember that?
Well, we're going back to high school here.
Okay.
Yes, I just remember laughing a lot.
Was it a pleasant or
Yeah.
or what, or did you take too much?
I was lucky. It was very pleasant.
Oh, good. Because I hear like patients, like when I try to advise about using edibles, some people would say like, no, I don't like edibles, or I tried them and I don't like them because I had a bad experience. And it's most of the time it's just poor guidance or poor judgment.
Or not knowing the dose,
Yeah,
right? Because
yeah.
the thing about an edible is it's so important to know the dose.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not, when I was doing this in high school, we would just like make brownies. We didn't know the dose. So, I mean, I'm lucky that I never got to that other place of high anxiety or paranoia. But yeah, the dose is so important. And so,
Yes, and speaking of dose, going like so, let's talk about, for instance, inhaled methods. The inhaled methods meaning anything you smoke, and it can go from anything from using flour to any concentrates to anything processed. So anytime inhaled methods usually are one of the fastest ways of getting it into your body, because you're bypassing your gut, you're bypassing your GI tract, and you're just your lungs. It's just the exchange happens within minutes. It's like the air you're breathing. Sorry, the air you're breathing. It's just exchange happens immediately, and that's why smoking, you feel it within minutes. So with inhaled methods, it works fast, but also the effect doesn't last that long. It's a short-lived, and it's a preferred methods for a lot of people who need an immediate relief. You have acute symptoms, you need immediate relief. By all means, like inhaled methods would work. There's a slew of products, and we'll talk about that, because not everything, smoking is not the greatest, because in general we're not meant to smoke anything, right? Inhaled methods are not an optimal methods truly for your body, but it's some people enjoy doing that, and if it's not causing any adverse side effects onto your body, I tell people it's your body. After all, you know it better than I do.
I can relate to everything that you're sharing, because I have asthma, and I'm going to be honest, I do love smoking joints. I love the communal aspect of
I did not
smoking
know
joints.
that. Don't you say?
It might be true. And but as someone that has asthma, I only smoke joints on special occasions. And I always wanted to really understand, why does smoking irritate my lungs so much? What's happening there?
So it could be a lot of factors, and like I said, we're not meant to smoke anything. It's like you standing in front of smoke or a smoke room or whatever. But I understand, like, you're smoking, your lungs sometimes can get adjusted. Your not your lungs, your breathing tract can get, there's cilia in there that's just like hair, like that kind of helps propel mucus and all that. And usually smokers or who smoke, that kind of like goes away, and that's why people produce a lot of mucus. So even when smoking cannabis, it's still not ideal, but it's it's one of the fastest ways. But also there's
that's really important, right?
Yeah.
Because in some moments you're gonna any person may be outweighing two different things, and you have to only know what is more of a priority for you.
Correct. And cannabis in general, THC is actually a muscle relaxant, so it actually can help dilate airways. And
That's what I've heard also.
But this is when the caveat. So when it comes to cannabis, inhaled methods, there's stuff like smoking a joint, right? The flower variety can vary. So if you grow this like organically, or you grow it without using pesticides, which this is grown.
Beautiful.
It's gonna smoke differently than something grown using chemicals, and can be more irritating because those chemicals are in that plant too. Another thing is different methods you use it, like people who use bongs, you're burning everything, combusting everything, compared to like a joint, so you have more of a like tar and stuff, so it's a little bit more. And actually, I'm not
tell us more about the bong.
People can enjoy, but you're actually filtering all the good stuff with the water. People think that the water filters the bad stuff. It actually filters the good stuff, and you're getting majority. So a bong, unless you really prefer bongs, it's really, it's more beneficial to smoke a joint or
This is so
or
interesting. I used to
or
think
even
the bong
like a
was
pipe.
healthier than the joint. So this
You
is
see
this
how
is
people
why I'm
think.
such a big fan of Abby's.
Yeah. Or people the culture, I don't want the culture, but people also talk about with joints, like the ash or whatever, that's also has no significant value to, it's the resin that's burning. But like,
And also, aren't there also different qualities of rolling papers?
correct. It's like there's different factors. It's the rolling paper, it's the quality of the product, processed products. Like, there are people who don't smoke, who have higher tolerance to cannabis and don't smoke flower, that smoke dabs, for instance. There's also,
you got to tell us about dabbing, Abby.
so dabbing is usually, I mean, and people can look up what dabbing is, but usually it's using concentrated medicine. A dab is usually a potent, concentrated THC product that is equivalent to maybe, like, I think a dab would be like smoking 2 joints at once. Wouldn't you say that, Eric? Or a joint, maybe?
Possibly, depending on how good the dab is, I guess.
Yeah, but if you hand me that, I think that's a dab, that black, like, that one, sorry, me.
Careful.
Bloopers. So this is, I mean, they come in like, this is like a dab, and basically you heat whatever and you put it in here and you inhale. But it's a potent, medicine that can, for people who are not used to dabbing or whatever, this will cause you problems, because consuming a big amount of THC can actually lower, because THC is a vasodilator, meaning it relaxes your muscles and relaxes and causes your blood vessels to dilate, open up. So if you're someone who's already like dehydrated, or already has lower blood pressure, or is taking blood pressure medicine, and you take a dab or whatever, your blood pressure tanks and you pass out. And I've seen it actually with people. I always, like,
That's really important information.
in festivals
Abby.
or whatever, I tell people, if you've never taken a dab before, if you don't have, like, you're not used to, you're novice, you're not used to smoking cannabis, don't, take a dab as your first try, because could be dangerous. Look at this is, can I share this, Eric?
Mm-hmm.
This is Eric's cute little rig. I find it so cute. So cute. And there are other electronic devices, like, if you want to compare the different methods of smoking cannabis, truly using dry herb vaporizers is the best way, because when you're smoking cannabis flower, or whether you're using a bong, or whether you're using a pipe or a one hitter, all of those methods, you're combusting the flower and just burning it all at once. Ideally, most cannabinoids and terpenes burn at a lower temperature. When you're combusting, when you're burning, it's usually 400, 500 degrees temperature. But most vaporizing temperature for THC, I think, is 230 degrees Fahrenheit. I know that because when I make my edibles at home, when I decarb my medicine, I have to put it at a certain temperature. So usually it's lower temperatures. So This is where like things like dry herb vaporizers come. I tell patients who enjoy smoking use inhaled methods to invest in something, a dry herb vaporizer, because I'm not, and by the way, I'm not promoting anything you see here. These are just friends and family donated, so we can just show you
For educational
for
purposes.
educational purposes. But basically, with a dry herb vaporizer, and there's lots of them available online, is you take your flower or whatever medicine and you grind it and you put it in here. And
Beautiful flower.
thank you. And you're not, and you don't basically, you're not heating it. You're doing it at lower temperatures to control, to vaporize those cannabinoids and terpenes and activate, and then you inhale it. And it's not, some of them, depending on the temperatures, you don't produce as much smoke and all that, but it's less irritating to the lungs for some people. But some people also, it could be the opposite. So but if you're technically speaking, it's less irritating than any of these other methods to use. But
I do have a dry herb vaporizer at home, and that is I primarily use edibles, but then once in a while my go-to would be my Volcano, which is the dry herb vaporizer. And it's definitely better for me than, say, if I were to smoke a joint or a pipe.
yeah, I mean, and you notice it,
Yeah.
But one thing that you don't see on the table here, and I'm completely against actually, is any vape cartridges. Those
This
are
is so
pure
important.
poison.
This is so important to address.
And I really, because they're marketed as something healthy for people,
Yeah.
and they're convenient, but I'll tell you what they do. Number one, none of those vape cartridges, they're mixed with a lot of chemicals and stuff in them. And when people will justify and say those are like food grade, we're using, yes, food grade doesn't translate to something I can smoke, that's completely different. The other thing, there's been a couple of cases actually a few years ago, about 4 or 5 years ago, and it wasn't with cannabis products. It was actually with regular tobacco, that there were 2 cases of heavy metal toxicity from the heating element in those vape cartridges. So also, like, you have to be, there's nothing healthy. I don't care what anyone tries to justify and say, oh, I make it this way or whatever. You're mixing the cannabis with something else to make it liquid, to purify it so you can smoke it. And that's where it becomes irritating. I've seen it, trigger headaches. It has increased risk, for irritation, bronchitis, all of that. So that's why I'm not a proponent of vape cartridges at all.
Thank you for saying
any of those
that
methods.
and sharing that, because they're so prevalent. Just because the ease, I get it. A lot of my clients will say to me, I'm not judging anyone, just saying, because a lot of people say, well, there's a no smoking thing so I can, or they can do that in a hotel.
Get a dry herb vaporizer. It has less smoke than that, But the other thing, the thing that bothers me is that they're marketed as, oh, there's something healthy.
They're mismarketed.
Yeah, but number one, they increase your tolerance, really, because they're easy to use, they're easy to grab, they're, people just use them and just becomes like, and then your tolerance goes up, because those usually vape cartridges pack a lot of, like, I've seen some of the percentages on them are like crazy percentages. And even patients tell me that they, they use them sometimes. They're like, whoa, this is like way stronger. I have to be, So, but some people use them because they're discreet also. If you absolutely have to use them, don't make it your main method of use. And for all of you who have headaches, pay attention. If you use those products, pay attention to the frequency of your headaches and intensity of your headaches when you use these products or not. But also, let's talk about the other possibility of side effects when you're using any of those inhaled methods, right? We're not meant to smoke anything, right? For that. So you remember we were talking about our sinuses? Your sinuses, what they do is there's these chambers in, and you have your frontal sinuses and right here, they have mucus in them, and they just basically clean the air before it reaches your lungs, kind of one method of your body, like protecting you from infection and all that. So whenever you're smoking, you're just kind of like, imagine sitting in a room and infusing it with smoke, and it's just getting on the walls and all of that. It's similar. It gets clogged. So people who have sinus problems don't smoke, um, or people who have bronchitis. Because it can irritate, the lungs and all that. If you notice it's one method is bothering you and all that, and you still enjoy, try a different method. Or asthma, like you said, some people, like you notice certain methods will trigger your asthma over others. But in general, if you are someone who has asthma, emphysema, or even heart disease, I wouldn't recommend smoking at all.
Yeah.
Period. But if you're
I
someone,
only do it on special occasions.
but to me also, like another, I find like a lot of patients describe it that just the aspect, like the ritual of rolling, of handling flour and stuff, is just like, it's part of the, like, it's like they enjoy doing it. I find it, I don't know, to me, my personal take on it, the further away something is from its natural source, the less beneficial it is to you. And the more this plant goes away from its source, it loses its benefits. Same like food, processed foods and stuff like that. The best way I can compare smoking a joint, for instance, with smoking a vape cartridge is you eating a fresh papaya or fresh pineapple versus eating a Pop-Tart and calling it nutritional. Not hating on Pop-Tarts, but that's what processed foods comes to my mind. But that's when, listen to. But I've also had a colleague of mine who was a pulmonologist who told me one time that he had a 80-something-year-old lady that was on 3 different inhalers, that was struggling, and the only thing that used to work for her is her smoking a joint. It would just take away the wheezing and stuff, but he made sure that it's to smoke, good weed. He told her, don't, and don't smoke tobacco with it. But another thing also, that for patients that I tell them not to smoke, is people who have low immune system, or autoimmune diseases, or people undergoing chemotherapy or cancer. And it's not just because and people undergoing surgery, and we'll talk about that. Because smoking, especially we live on an island here, or not necessarily on an island, plants can harbor mold or fungus, and
Yeah.
there are 1,000 types of mold, and your body protects. Your body is able to protect and all that. And for instance, aspergillus is one of the things that people test for with cannabis. But aspergillus is predominant everywhere. There's different types of it, but there are certain types that can be harmful to patients. But in general, like cancer patients or people who are with low immune system, I tell them to be careful, if they are to smoke, to be careful of the source that they're using, because if they get an infection, and I don't recommend smoking, period, for these for these specific
this
people.
This is another just really such an important piece of information that you're dropping for us right now. Just because a normal person with a health condition, if they go to a dispensary, they're not necessarily going to hear this level of...
Remember, guys, the dispensary, I appreciate, we have dispensary and access, but dispensaries are trying to sell you something, That's all. They offer and they're helpful, and some of them are helpful more than others, but don't rely on dispensary folks for dosing or sometimes for information, because a lot of times I feel people base it on experience.
Yeah.
Sometimes they recommend. But going back to smoking, one last thing about smoking, if you are going to have any kind of surgery, do not smoke, you know.
And why is that, Abby?
It's not, to clarify, it doesn't interact with anesthesia. You're fine with, but because smoking delays tissue healing in general, so because it causes, like smoking, the act of smoking causes constriction in like tiny blood vessels, and if your body's trying to heal, it like increases blood flow to certain areas and all that. So if you are undergoing surgery, do not smoke. Stop smoking ahead of time. Give your body, rest and all that. Switch to edibles, which takes me to the next part, edibles. And I feel like I'm talking too much, Mia.
No, because this is your realm, and this is fascinating because these are like most people also wouldn't know, right? Don't smoke before surgery, and some people aren't always disclosing to their physicians that they use cannabis, right? Especially if it's not legalized in their state, and this is really useful information for people to know.
That's why I, like when patients, like I certify people or like I get all that information and I give them that sound advice. I don't just, give people a card and send them on their way, But, different people, that's the service you get with me.
Yeah, amazing service.
Take it. Which leads me to edibles. Edibles, I like edibles because they have a prolonged duration and they're useful for people who need chronic symptom management and like sleep or chronic pain, because they can last longer. And edibles, when you consume them, as if you notice, they don't work like with it smoking. Smoking takes within minutes. 2 to 5 minutes and you can feel the effect of smoking, versus an edible depends on a lot of factors. It's not based on age, or it's not based on, like your body. It's really based on your metabolism, based on your diet, and also it depends on whether you take it with food, without food, and how is that edible formulated, meaning what was it extracted in and all that. If you want to really nerd, like, or like there's when we talk about edibles, there's like people call like these tinctures, or like there's like, hold on, how did we open this? I managed to open it. Like edibles, like and gummies, or anything you ingest is basically anything you eat is an edible. And there are some that people put under. We're talking about like with edibles. There's some people that stuff you put under your tongue and stuff that you swallow. Let's back up a little bit to talk about stuff that you put under your tongue. Technically, stuff that you put under your tongue is stuff that so you can absorb. You have mucous membranes that have a lot of blood supply underneath. So the concept of it is that you're putting the medicine there and you're increasing exposure. But truly, a true tincture is usually based in alcohol. And so if you put alcohol in your mouth, right, it absorbs, right, and so it acts as a carrier for that medicine, and it gets it into your bloodstream faster. So usually anything sublingual works within 15 minutes. But there's another misconception. Let me expose the industry here. I don't work for anyone, by the way. I work for myself. People label tinctures here, but they're not truly tinctures. They're made in oil-based. And oil-based, yeah, you can put it under your tongue. You'll get a little bit of exposure, but oil is actually faster if you swallow it. Anything that's made in oil, swallow it faster. Your body will process it faster. But that's another misconception. People put it under their tongue.
Yeah. That's what I've always done.
You will feel it will absorb. I'm not saying it's not going to absorb, but it's truly a tincture. If it's an alcohol based, yes, it will absorb. And I've tried CBD tinctures that are alcohol based. Yes, you know, you can absorb them. There are some drinks also, like I've seen like some like fizzy drinks, soda drinks, stuff like that.
I haven't tried them, but I've seen them too.
But that's the difference versus anything you ingest edible can take anywhere between 45 minutes, 30 minutes. I'm just giving anywhere between 30 minutes to 2 hours. So the whole concept with edibles is always to start slow and slow.
Yes.
And low and slow meaning if you're someone who's used to smoking cannabis, you're used to that immediate effect. So with edibles, you have to be patient.
Very patient.
Take it and forget it. And do not redose before waiting 2 hours, really.
That's so important, because sometimes when people are their first experience and they have too much, it's hard for them to give it another chance.
Correct.
So I always tell clients too, you'd rather be underwhelmed rather than overwhelmed.
Correct. And I tell people you can always take more than, if you've taken too much. And the reason is edibles take time to work is because whenever you ingest something, right, it has to go to your stomach, then gets, digested, go to your small intestine, then it goes to your liver, and then it goes through another metabolism, what we call second pass metabolism. And that's when people like, whoa, it hits them all of a sudden, right? Because that's from your liver, it just like shoots into your bloodstream. And your body converts it from delta 9 into delta 10. I'm not going to go into the details.
But that's fat. No,
but it's a little bit concentrated.
Can you go into the details?
One day I will.
Okay.
But with edibles, it's helpful if you take it with food, because you get more money or more bucks for it, because you absorb more if you take it with food compared if you take it on an empty stomach. It will work faster, but you don't absorb as much. So keep those things in mind. And if you're taking it for sleep, it works wonderful for sleep. Different formulations will work for different things. We'll talk about different cannabinoids. But if you're taking it for sleep, my recommendation is taking it 2 hours before bedtime with dinner time or with a snack. And it's usually helpful to take a healthy snack like omega-3s, like nuts and stuff like that, because it helps improve absorption of that. And some people who have gut issues, like gut absorption issues, Crohn's, sometimes it's kind of like with edibles, it's a hit or miss. Sometimes some people don't absorb those, or some people actually it works there and it helps heal that area. So with people with gut problems, I just tell them to give it a try. But also another thing we fall into is, how's that edible made? And what kind of stuff does it have in it? And how much sugar does it have? I'm not against sugar, but how much, like for instance, I've seen edibles made with corn syrup, stuff. I don't touch those. I don't touch anything corn syrup, for instance. I wouldn't eat it, even though it has THC in it. I'm not touching it. The cool thing is you can actually take, when I lollipop my plants, meaning when I cut the leaves to make room for I actually take these and make them as tea and drink them, because they don't have THC in them, but they have other cannabinoids and other terpenes, and you can use them. And for my Kapuna patients who can't tolerate the feeling or edibles, or can't tolerate edibles even at lower dosages, it makes them too much, I actually tell them to take the flower itself and steep it as tea and drink it. So because you're getting the cannabinoids in their active forms, and sometimes the heat you really need, like you were talking about higher vaporization temperatures, but it still is beneficial and it doesn't cause any intoxication for the most part, but it still can help with symptoms. But just keep in mind with edibles, it's like a prolonged delay and a longer duration. And the more you take, the more it lasts in your body. The first Cannabis Expo I went to in 2017, I learned my lesson and I ate an edible from Pakaloha seeds. Thank you, Bong. and I slept for 18 hours. Never again. So, so, but edibles really work really well for sleep, for like we talked about our episode with sleep. They help your body sleep and recover. So they're wonderful for chronic management. And one thing for edibles for patients with glaucoma, it actually works really well for patients with glaucoma, because a lot of eye doctors don't like patients to rely on just cannabis for their glaucoma, because smoking weed, because it works fast and it's short-lived, it can cause spikes in the pressure in the eyes. So people say, don't smoke weed. No, it causes worsening of your glaucoma. Well, smoking, but not edibles. Edibles, they have a lower, and that's another thing I tell patients who
Wow.
have,
Such important, again, like such important information, Abby.
yeah, it's like patients who have chronic pain, like, why do you want to wait for to smoke to have, control your pain before it starts? You can medicate with, with edibles if you know the right dose and all that. So it does work, I think, they really work well. And the other thing I want to point out, for instance, there's a lot of hate on cannabis, studies that say, oh, causes like this. And there was a recent study that the American Heart Association, like a year ago or whatever, it was a survey, and they surveyed and they said, oh, it causes worsening cardiovascular disease. But number one, it wasn't, they didn't discuss what type of cannabis was used, for instance. Was it vape cartridges? Was it, if you tell me people are smoking only vape cartridges, yeah, they're going to have a lot of, or if people are just relying on smoking weed or low quality weed, or, weed that's sprayed with crap or stuff. It's like, eating junk food compared to eating good food.
Yeah, there's going to be an impact.
Yeah, it's just paying attention. And the last thing that I wanted to say is topicals is another wonderful method that I honestly appreciate. And topicals meaning any creams, any salves, any lotions, they work really well for muscular pain, they work for joint pain, they work for sunburn, they help with healing scars. I've even seen anecdotal, like I think, is it Chad's, he shared his story. He healed his mom's cancer with just using RSO on her arm. I've seen, but topicals, they work just locally. They don't make you high. So you can use them if you're having pain. Women who have, menstrual pain, and let's say you're somewhere and you cannot consume cannabis systemically, meaning you cannot smoke it, or you cannot, let's say you're driving, or, you want to go do your grocery shopping or something, and you're having your shoulders bothering you, or you're having menstrual pain, you can just apply the topical, and it could help. Sometimes it works relief pain. It works even for nausea.
Oh.
I've seen patients use it for nausea, and it works. Cancer patients use it, during their treatment, right? They cannot get, and they will just put it. And I had a couple patients, they said it works. It's just, so I like it, and you can use it in combination, the topicals, you can use it in combination with, like, the smoking or the edibles. It's like an added benefit for it. But it's just, this plant is so versatile, and it's got, like you said, it has so many treatments. But it's just, there is misinformation out there about using it and how, like, all that. And there's products that have THC that are not so great also with that. But now shoot your questions. What do you want to... Or Eric, what questions you got?
I don't have any questions.
Everyone is... It's, you guys, it's like, we're tired. What time is it now? Is it like already like 10 o'clock or...
9:44.
9:44. But I hope you guys enjoyed our episode. I talked most of the time of it, but
I
it's
asked
just
my questions, Abby, and
I know.
and I mean, I just want to reiterate the benefit of having a cannabis nurse is that she can explain to us things that, how things impact our health. And no judgment about whatever choice you make, but we all want to make educated decisions. And I mean, just the amount of information I learned from you tonight, like before surgery, right? Things like that, just that a person may not have access to, like, so I'm just grateful for you to share your wisdom with us. So I just want to thank you, Abby.
You're welcome. I truly enjoy educating people about cannabis, and that's why cannabis medicine is its own realm. It's not just a plant, and you can use it, but it's a medicine too that with the right guidance you can optimize. Even if you've been using it for quite a while, it can still have some side effects, and you can optimize your benefits from it. If you're using it and relying on it solely to manage your symptoms, you can optimize your therapy with just the right dosing, the right if you have the right information with you. But I love talking about cannabis, and I love educating my patients about it, and just love growing it. This is why living the green. Living the green. But if you guys have any questions or have any topics, let us know. Put them in the comments. We'll try to respond. We'll look for future topics. But we're both of us. We got plenty of topics between the both of us. And please, if you liked this episode, subscribe, and share. This is how we get our word out, and we film at nighttime. There's no green screen. We're filming in my lanai, and it's late at night, and Eric and Michal, all of us are tired, yeah.
But we're so grateful for each and every one of you and for all of the support, and just a lot of gratitude.
Yep.
And we are grateful to have Eric, our amazing producer, the man behind the scenes.
Eric, what's your nickname? Yoshi? What is it?
The White Yoshi.
The White Yoshi. And now it's time for your medicine, everyone who takes their edibles. It's time for bedtime. Take your medicine. I actually give this to my dog. My puppy. But anyways, thank you guys. Have a wonderful evening, day.
Thank you.